Why, hello there, beautiful people. What's up? Good to see you. I'm back. Gonna show you some more music from my library. This time I decided to pick out some albums by my top 10 favorite bands. In no particular order, just 10 bands that I love, that I'm obsessed with, I've always loved, and they're just like go-to bands. So, without further ado, we have Wilco here again. I talked about Wilco in the last video, but I have to express how much I love this band. This band is fantastic, one of the innovators of the alternative country genre, and then they kind of branched off and started doing a bunch of weird sounds and different kinds of music, and this is a notorious album for Wilco fans out there. They'll know it, but this is Yankee Hotel Foxtrot. This is probably their most well-known album, and it's got some fantastic songs. I Am Trying to Break Your Heart is one of them, Jesus, etc., Ashes of American Flags. It's awesome. Awesome. Definitely one to check out. And next up, taking a bit of a stroll down the metal way, but this is a band called Agalloch. These guys were probably my first black metal band that I ever really got into. I can't even remember how I stumbled upon them. I think I just randomly found them on iTunes somehow and just looked into them, but this is the first album of theirs that I ever got. This is Ashes Against the Grain. Falling Snow is probably my favorite song off the album, as well as, there's not even a track listing on this, Limbs, which is the very first track on here. That one is really awesome. It's pretty straightforward black metal. Don't really know how else to describe it, but they did start to experiment a little bit more. And then this is an album called The White. This is actually a reissue, but in The White they went a more folky route, so it's really kind of weird, creepy folk music. In fact, they actually sample bits of audio from the original Wicker Man, not the one with Nicolas Cage, so you're not hearing the bees in the video or the album at all, no. You hear elements of the old Wicker Man movie. And this particular reissue comes with, this is The White right here, and then it comes with their other EP, which is called The Gray, and had only 2 tracks on it, so that was pretty cool, and it's got this nice book. Look at that, it's sleek. Oh, it's beautiful. So, that's Agalloch. And going off from metal, metalheads may disagree when I call this metal, but this is System of a Down, relatively notorious band. I don't know if you've ever heard of them. Probably have. But this is their album Toxicity. I remember listening to these guys when I was in 6th grade. My good friend showed me Chop Suey, which is on this album. There's an airplane taken out outside, oh my god. Anyways, this has Chop Suey on it, and it has other songs like Bounce, Science, and of course the song Toxicity. It's been always one of my favorite System of a Down records. I have all of them, but this one holds a special place in my heart. The other one that I really like is Mesmerized, which has BYOB on it. That was the other track that I listened to a lot as a kid. So yeah, there's that. Oh yes, this is Trocadero. In fact, I'm wearing a Trocadero shirt right now. But for those of you who know about Rooster Teeth and their show Red vs. Blue, this is the soundtrack from the first 5 seasons of Red vs. Blue. I remember getting this when I was a freshman in high school, and that's around the time that I was getting into Trocadero, and I just fell in love with this album. I just fell in love with it. I don't know what it was, but it was amazing to me. It just clicked with me. Really good songwriting. It's kind of difficult to describe other than just it's alternative rock. You definitely have to listen to it for sure, but the one thing I find interesting about this band is they don't use a bass guitar. He uses a baritone guitar, so it's a baritone guitar, drums, a bunch of awesome keyboards, and female-male harmonizing vocals. So this is this album. And a fun fact, I'm going to pull it out of my collection here. This is their live album. It's a CD/DVD set. I named this album. I named this record. And I remember the singer of this band and I are pretty good friends. He was talking to me about the project, and it needed a name, and I suggested an excerpt from one of their songs called Colors, and the name stuck. So now we have when we're together live in Austin, Texas. So that's what I did. I'm awesome. Alright, and I talked about this band too in the last video, but this is Flying Saucer Attack. Once again, they're really weird, ambient, shoegazy noise rock. This was the very first album that I heard of theirs. It's known as either just Flying Saucer Attack or Rural Psychedelic, but it has songs like Dreaming Hill and a cover of a song called The Downers, which is awesome. And the thing I found interesting about this album when I first got my hands on it was the fact that it's super, super noisy. The guitars are the center of attention, but then you have these really quiet, echoey voices along with drums and bass that you can kind of hear in the background, but they're just not the most prominent feature. The prominent feature is the guitars, and I was just drawn to that completely, and I think this is the album that really got me into a lot of experimental music. And next up we have the Deftones. This is White Pony. I have all their albums, but some of them I had to buy on iTunes and some of them I bought physically. But this is probably their most famous album, White Pony. It has songs like Digital Bath and Teenager, which I really like, and then The Passenger, which has the singer from Tool in it. That's a really good song. This is one of their older stuff. I brought this one out just because this is their most recent album. This is No Yokan. I really dug this album. A lot of people really liked Diamond Eyes, which I wasn't crazy into, but I thought it was okay. But this one came after Diamond Eyes, and I thought it was phenomenal. My personal favorite is Saturday Night Wrist, which I have on iTunes, and so I don't have a physical version of that, but next up, the next couple bands. So I should preference, I have a lot of CDs in my collection, but I also have purchased a lot of stuff on iTunes and Amazon MP3 and whatnot. So when I do that, I burn them all onto CDs, and they get transferred to this guy. Actually, this one's full, so I have another one. So I have these two guys, and these are all not even mix, what am I saying? CDRs of albums that I purchase on iTunes. So, the next band among the top 10 is, if I can find them, I'm probably not going to find them. It depends on which one I'm looking at. But the next one I want to talk about, which I'm not seeing, so I'm just going to roll with it here, is a band called Alt J. They're pretty new. They actually just came out with an album last year, but my friend showed me their first album, An Awesome Wave, and I listened to it on Spotify, and I was blown away. Like, it's very, very rare when I listen to an album, and I'm like, oh my god, I just have to buy this. So I remember stopping the streaming of it on Spotify and just going and buying the album and then listening to it there. It was phenomenal. It's beautiful music. It has some folk elements, some alternative rock elements, but it also has some weird electronica elements to it too. I don't really know how else to describe it. And the guy's vocals are just so weird and unique, and it may be too odd for some folks, but if you just stick with it, I think you would like it. It's really good stuff. Oh, of course, I flipped the page. This is them. This is the two albums. They're on CDRs here. Alright, so next up, after Alt J, 6 AM. Now this one is your traditional radio rock bands. I really like them. It's actually Nikki Sixx, the bassist from the band The Motley Crue. It's his side project he did with a guy by the name of James Michael, who is a famous producer. And another guy, I'm blanking on his name, DJ Ashbury, I think is how you say it. Anyways, he's the current guitarist of Guns N' Roses. And so the trio formed a band. And actually, the reason they formed the group is in promotion for, if I can find the book among my stack of books here. The reason they came together was for this. This is a book by Nikki Sixx. It's a compilation of his diary entries during the 1980s when he was suffering through a really bad heroin addiction. And so they made a concept album, a soundtrack, if you will, to this book called the Heroin Diary Soundtrack. And Their music is just full of emotion. It's some of the most intense and saddest songs you would probably ever hear, and I'm kind of a sucker for sad music, so of course when I heard the music, I was really digging it. So this was their first album, and then eventually they released a second album called This Is Gonna Hurt, and that one is awesome. Awesome. There's some emotional songs to it, but it kind of strayed away from this kind of emotional and moved on to just more straightforward rock and roll songs, which I dug. I like some rock and roll, so 6 a.m.'s Heroin, Diaries, and This Is Gonna Hurt, definitely up there. Who else do I have to talk about here? If I can find them in here. I guess not in here. The next band I want to talk about is The National. The National is an awesome band, and what I like about them is the songwriting is really unique. It's really hard lyrics to kind of wrap your head around, and it's, I guess you could call it traditional indie music. I don't like using the term indie to categorize music, but for most, it's easy to say. It's indie music. The vocalist has a really deep bass voice, and kind of juxtaposed with the light and cheery music, it can be kind of weird, but I just love them to death. They did the music, well, they did one of the songs for the Hunger Games soundtrack called Lean, and it's a fantastic song. Alligator is my personal favorite album. It's got a song called Abel on there, and The Geese of Beverly Road. Tremendous. And I'm looking at my notes here. This is so unprofessional. Oh my gosh. I talked about all of them. Okay, so the last band on the list is the Gorillaz. I'm searching for CDs here. I can't even fucking find them. Here we go. Yeah. So, Gorillaz. Yeah, there. Gorillaz. I love this band to death. And I remember being introduced to them during the Demon Days era. Feel Good Inc. was all the rage on the radio, and so I dug it, but I didn't listen to the band extensively until much later, and I remember getting a hold of their first album and having one of those moments where I was blown away by their first album. In fact, I actually like their first album a bit more than Demon Days. Not even just for Clint Eastwood, but there's a bunch of good tracks on this one. Demon Days is also really good, and then Plastic Beach I remember coming out, and I had a really hard time getting into it because it's super poppy. It's a lot more poppier than the previous releases, but if you let it grow on you, you will dig it. And it's got some fantastic musicians. Lou Reed is in it, Snoop Dogg's in it, De La Soul's in it, a whole bunch of guys. So I love the Gorillaz and what they do. They have a lot of awesome guest stars in their music, and I'm excited because they're coming out with a new one in probably another year or so. We'll see what happens. Still waiting on it, but anyways, that is 10 bands that I really like. Thank you for listening to me talk. I've talked a lot. Go out, listen to all those musics. That's not English. Listen to all of them is what I'm trying to say. Go and listen to all the albums I've recommended. Talk about it. Tell me what you think. I'll see you later.